He slammed his glass onto the marble table, the sound echoing through the penthouse like a thunderclap. "Let's see if the maid's boy knows which fork to use," the billionaire sneered, his voice dripping with sarcasm. The crowd burst into laughter, sharp, cruel, unrestrained. Every phone in the room came up at once. They wanted to film it. They wanted to capture the moment the poor kid embarrassed himself in front of New York's elite. At the center of it all stood Malik Johnson, 12 years old, nervous eyes, hands clasped tightly in front of him. His mother, Ruth, froze near the buffet table, her fingers trembling around a tray of champagne glasses. "Go on, boy," the billionaire mocked again. "Show us how smart the help's son really is." Malik swallowed hard. His heart pounded so loud it drowned the laughter around him. Everyone expected humiliation. No one expected what was about to happen next, because within minutes, the richest man in that room would be begging for forgiveness. Victor Langston was the kind of man who didn't walk. He owned every step he took. At 55, he ruled a tech empire worth billions. His charity gala tonight wasn't about generosity. It was about dominance. Every chandelier, every diamond, every glass of champagne served one purpose: to remind people that Victor Langston stood at the top of the world. He didn't host charity events to help the poor. He hosted them to prove that he could afford to pretend to care. Guests floated through the penthouse like perfume: wealthy investors, politicians, socialites. Their laughter sparkled as bright as the crystal glasses they held. But behind the marble columns and gold accents moved another world. The world of staff. The invisible hands that carried plates, filled glasses, wiped spills, and disappeared before anyone noticed. Among them was Ruth Johnson, head maid, 40 years old, steady, graceful. Her life revolved around service, quiet, humble, unseen. For 4 years she had worked in Victor Langston's household, keeping his mansion spotless and his parties perfect. And in that time she had learned one unshakable truth: the richer people are, the less they see the ones who serve them. Ruth's son, Malik, was never supposed to be here. But tonight the babysitter canceled, and she had no choice. She told him to sit quietly in the corner of the staff's hallway, to do his homework, to stay invisible. And for most of the night, he did. Malik was small for his age, skin like polished mahogany, eyes that held both fear and brilliance. He loved numbers, riddles, patterns, the kind of puzzles that made other kids groan. He carried a tiny notebook wherever he went, filled with scribbled equations and half-finished ideas. Every time Ruth passed him, she whispered, "Stay still, baby. Don't draw attention." He would nod, smiling softly because he understood. They lived in a world where being noticed could be dangerous. Then, near midnight, the incident happened. A group of guests gathered near Victor's poker table, laughing over a charity brain teaser he used to show off his intellect. "Who can solve this one?" Victor said, smirking as he wrote numbers on a napkin. The challenge was simple but clever, designed to make everyone else look foolish. A hush fell as the guests tried and failed. Laughter turned to awkward silence, and from the back of the room a small voice spoke. "I know the answer." The crowd turned. Ruth's heart stopped. There stood Malik, notebook in hand, looking straight at Victor Langston. He wasn't trying to interrupt. He just couldn't help himself. The pattern was too obvious to ignore. Victor blinked, then smiled. The kind of smile that wasn't kind at all. "Oh, this should be good," he said. "The maid's son wants to teach me math." A few people chuckled. Someone whispered, "This will be entertaining." Victor motioned toward the boy. "Come here, genius. Let's see what you've got." Ruth started to move forward, whispering, "Malik, no." But it was too late. The cameras were already out. The crowd was already hungry. Malik stepped closer. Victor leaned down, napkin in hand. "You think you can solve this?" "Go on." Malik studied the numbers. His lips moved slightly as he counted under his breath. Then he looked up. "You wrote it wrong," he said quietly. "The equation only works if you reverse the second digit." The laughter exploded again. But this time, it wasn't all directed at Malik. Victor's smile twitched. "Oh, and what makes you so sure?" Malik explained the logic in one calm breath, each step clear, precise, irrefutable. And when he finished, one of the professors in the crowd nodded slowly. "He's right." The laughter stopped. Victor's smirk faltered. That's when the billionaire made a mistake he'd regret forever. He leaned closer, his voice low and sharp. You think you're clever, don't you? Let's make it interesting. One challenge. If you win, I'll donate $10,000 to any school you want. If you lose, your mother packs her things tonight, the crowd gasped. Ruth's face went pale. It wasn't a game anymore. It was a threat. Malik looked at his mother. She shook her head, tears forming. Please don't, but something shifted in the boy's eyes. It wasn't fear anymore. It was focus. He stepped forward, meeting the billionaire's gaze without flinching. I accept, Victor laughed. Bold, but foolish. He turned to the guests. Ladies and gentlemen, entertainment for the evening. Phones rose again. The room pulsed with cruel excitement. But as the billionaire prepared to humiliate the boy, he didn't notice the calm intelligence staring back at him. He didn't see the quiet calculation, the silent observation, the unshakable patience. Because Malik wasn't just a child standing in a room full of power. He was the beginning of a lesson Victor Langston would never forget. And in a few short minutes, the entire room would realize it too. The room shimmered with tension. Guests leaned forward, wine glasses forgotten, phones ready to capture every humiliating second. Victor Langston smirked like a man watching a fly walk into a spider's web. He snapped his fingers, and one of his assistants brought over a sleek digital screen used for party games. Let's make this official, Victor said. I'll give you a few riddles. Let's see if the Maid's son can think faster than the man who built 3 tech companies. A ripple of laughter broke out again, low, uneasy. Some people were enjoying the cruelty. Others were just relieved it wasn't them being tested. Malik stood straight, eyes calm, voice soft. Okay, that single word silenced the room, Victor began. If 5 machines can make 5 gadgets in 5 minutes, how many machines would it take to make 100 gadgets in 100 minutes? He grinned at his audience, expecting confusion. Malik didn't even blink. 5, he said. What? Victor frowned. The number of machines doesn't matter, Malik explained. Each machine makes 1 gadget in 5 minutes. So in 100 minutes, each one makes 20. 5 times 20 equals 100. Murmurs swept through the guests. Victor's smile faded. It had taken him 10 seconds to ask the question. It had taken Malik 5 to destroy it. Beginner's luck, Victor said, forcing a laugh. Let's raise the stakes. He typed a new problem onto the screen. Something twisted, layered, the kind of logic puzzle designed to break confidence. He read it aloud slowly, emphasizing each word as if to confuse. 3 people check into a hotel room that costs $30. They each pay $10. Later, the clerk realizes it should have been $25 and sends the bellboy with $5. The bellboy keeps 2 and returns $1 to each guest. Now each guest paid $9, totaling $27. The bellboy kept 2. That's $29. Where's the missing $1? The crowd laughed, already knowing the riddle. It was one of Victor's favorites. No one ever solved it fast. Malik tilted his head, his brow furrowed only for a moment. There's no missing $1, he said. The crowd fell silent. The math is framed wrong. They paid $27 total, and the clerk has $25, the bellboy 2. It's all there. You just added instead of separating totals. A hush spread across the room. A few people nodded, realizing he was right. Even the math professor Victor had invited looked impressed. Victor's smirk wavered. Not bad for a beginner. Ruth watched from the back, clutching her apron, torn between fear and pride. Her son stood there, calm, confident, while the billionaire fumbled for dominance. She could hardly breathe. Victor straightened his tie. Fine, you can solve riddles. Let's see how you handle real numbers. He leaned forward, his tone sharp again. If I invest $10,000 at 5% compound interest for 5 years, what's the total return? The crowd chuckled. This wasn't a game for children anymore. Malik thought for a moment. Then softly he said, $12,763. The professor in the back blinked, took out his phone, and did the math. Then looked up, astonished. He's correct. Down to the $1. A ripple of gasps ran through the room. Someone whispered, he didn't even use a calculator. Victor's cheeks flushed. You memorized it? Malik shook his head. No, I understand it. The words hit harder than any insult. For the first time, Victor Langston looked unsure of himself. He glanced around the room, at the guests, the cameras, the professor nodding in approval. He felt his power slipping, his control evaporating in real time. So he did what men like him always do when their ego is threatened. He got meaner. All right, Victor snapped. Enough parlor tricks. Let's play for real. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a checkbook. I'll write a check for $10,000 right now. If you solve my next problem, the money's yours. If not, your mother doesn't just lose her job. She loses her reference too. A wave of shock moved through the room. Even the cruelest guests looked uncomfortable now. But Victor didn't care. He needed to win. Malik glanced at his mother. She shook her head, terrified. He whispered, "It's okay, Mom," then turned back to Victor. Deal! Victor grinned and scribbled a new equation on the screen. Numbers, letters, symbols. It looked like something out of a university exam. Tell me the missing variable, Victor said. And show your work. Malik stared at the board, quiet. The room buzzed with nervous anticipation. Seconds passed. Then a full minute. Victor folded his arms. Too hard for you? Malik took a slow breath. No, just making sure I don't embarrass you too quickly. The room erupted in shocked laughter. Not at the boy, but at the billionaire. Ruth gasped softly. Her son had never spoken like that. Malik turned back to the board, and his voice steadied. The answer is x equals 4. Victor's face froze. And here's why. He explained step by step how each part of Victor's equation canceled out. The small algebraic trick Victor had hidden to confuse him. The logic was airtight, the reasoning perfect. When he finished, the professor in the back clapped once. Then again, within seconds, the whole room followed. Victor stood still, red-faced, frozen in disbelief. He wanted to argue, but there was nothing left to say. The cameras had captured everything. Malik looked up at him. Can I have my check now? Laughter rippled through the room. Real, genuine laughter this time, not the cruel kind that had started the night. Victor didn't move. His ego had shattered in front of 50 witnesses. But even worse than humiliation was the realization dawning in his eyes. The boy hadn't come to fight him. He had come to teach him. Malik held his gaze. My grandfather used to say something, he said quietly. He told me the smartest people in the room are the ones still willing to learn. And for a moment, just a moment, Victor Langston didn't see a servant's child. He saw brilliance, unfiltered, undeniable brilliance. The crowd applauded again, louder this time, as Ruth stepped forward and wrapped her arms around her son. Victor sat back down, eyes distant, lips pressed together. He had spent his entire life believing power came from money, but tonight, a 12-year-old boy had shown him power could come from mind and from dignity. The next day, that video spread faster than Victor could stop it. Every guest had filmed. Every platform carried the headline, Billionaire schooled by Maid's son in front of entire city. Victor's PR team tried to bury it. But truth, once seen, doesn't disappear, and that was only the beginning, because Malik Johnson's quiet brilliance was about to change both of their lives forever. The next morning, every major platform was buzzing with the same story. The video from Victor Langston's penthouse had gone viral overnight. Dozens of camera angles, millions of views, thousands of comments, all saying the same thing. The maid's son taught a billionaire what intelligence really looks like. News anchors debated it. Talk shows replayed it. Clips of Malik's calm explanations flooded social media. The world wasn't just watching a boy solve riddles. They were watching arrogance crumble in real time. Victor tried to call it a misunderstanding, but the internet had already chosen its hero. And it wasn't him. By noon, sponsors began to pull out of his foundation. By evening, his board requested a private conversation. And by the end of the week, Victor Langston, the man who once treated people like props, was no longer the CEO of his own empire. He disappeared from headlines almost as quickly as he dominated them. But Malik, his name was everywhere. Reporters surrounded Ruth outside their small apartment the next morning. Her hands shook as she tried to speak. We never wanted attention, she said quietly. He just loves numbers. Malik, shy as ever, hid behind her, clutching his old notebook. the same one that had carried every dream he'd written since he was 6. One of the reporters asked, "Malik, how did you learn all that?" He shrugged. "My grandfather taught me. He said math is like people. If you understand the patterns, you can understand anything." That one line spread almost as fast as the video itself. Understand the patterns trended for 3 straight days. Educators, parents, even CEOs shared it online. Suddenly, Malik wasn't just a viral story. He was an inspiration. A week later, the Johnsons received a letter. It was from the Milton Academy for Advanced Learning, one of the top schools in the country. They had seen Malik's video, and they wanted him. Full scholarship, housing, books, everything covered. Ruth cried for a full minute before she could even read the entire letter out loud. She'd spent years cleaning the hallways of schools her son could never attend. Now her son would walk through doors that had always been locked to them. That night, Malik sat by the window, looking out at the city lights. He held his notebook open on his lap, a fresh page waiting. On it he wrote 6 words. "I'm not afraid to be seen." For the first time, he wasn't invisible. Meanwhile, Victor Langston sat alone in his glass office, stripped of his title, his empire, and his pride. The silence was louder than applause. The same phones that had once recorded his victories were now the same ones that had destroyed his reputation. He watched Malik's interviews on the news, the calm voice, the grace, the way the boy thanked him for the opportunity to learn. Victor felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Shame. A few weeks later, he showed up at a community event hosted by a new foundation. The name on the banner read, "The Malik Johnson Education Fund for Hidden Genius." It had been started by one of the professors from that night. Children from underprivileged backgrounds sat at tables filled with puzzles and computers. Ruth greeted guests with the same quiet dignity she'd always had. And there, at the front of the room, was Malik, teaching a group of kids how to solve problems with logic and patience. Victor stood in the doorway, hat in hand, unsure what to say. When Ruth saw him, she froze, but Malik simply looked up and smiled faintly. "Hi, Mr. Langston," he said. "Would you like to join us?" Victor swallowed hard. "I don't think I deserve that." Malik tilted his head. "Then start by listening." So he did. For the next hour, the man who once mocked a maid's son sat silently among children, learning. And for the first time, he understood the real meaning of education.
Months passed. The world moved on to new headlines, but the story of that night never really died. Clips of Malik's calm defiance are still used in classrooms to this day. Motivational speakers quote him. Educators study how confidence like his is built, not born. Ruth became the director of the foundation that bore her son's name. Her job title changed, but her humility never did. She made sure the scholarships went not to the loudest, but to the overlooked. Children like Malik, quiet, curious, underestimated. Each year, the foundation helped dozens of kids find schools that saw their worth. And every time Ruth signed a scholarship letter, she smiled to herself. It felt like cleaning in a way. Except now, instead of polishing floors, she was clearing paths. On Malik's first day at Milton Academy, the principal welcomed him personally. "Your story reminded us what education is supposed to do," she said. Malik thanked her, then walked into the classroom. He wasn't wearing designer clothes. He didn't have a fancy watch. But every student in that room turned to look at him. Not because of what he wore, but because of what he represented. A teacher introduced him to the class. "Everyone, this is Malik Johnson, the young man who reminded the world that intelligence has no price tag." The room erupted in applause. Malik smiled shyly, then opened his notebook. At the top of the first page, he wrote a new sentence. "Never let anyone define your worth." Years later, a journalist asked him during an interview, "Do you ever think about that night in the penthouse?" Malik nodded slowly. "Sometimes. Not because of what he said to me, but because it showed me something." The interviewer leaned forward. "What's that?" Malik smiled. that arrogance doesn't destroy people. It reveals them. And somewhere, in a quiet apartment downtown, Victor Langston watched that interview on an old television. The light flickered across his face as he whispered, "He's right. He'd lost everything he thought made him powerful. But in losing it, he finally understood what power really was. Not the kind that buys silence, but the kind that inspires change." Today, the Malik Johnson Education Fund sponsors over 200 students nationwide. Malik, now a young man, still mentors children every weekend. He teaches them how to see patterns in math, in people, in life. He tells them, your circumstances aren't a limitation. They're your training. And every time he speaks, he ends with the same words his grandfather once told him. Real intelligence doesn't live in fancy offices or private schools. It lives in curiosity, in hunger, in the quiet courage to keep learning when no one believes in you. So the next time someone underestimates you, remember this story. Remember the boy who turned humiliation into a lesson and arrogance into respect, because brilliance doesn't ask for permission. It simply shows up and changes everything. Stories like this remind us that true worth isn't measured by wealth or titles. It's revealed by character. If you believe in stories of justice, redemption, and the power of unseen genius, make sure to subscribe for more. Because somewhere right now, another brilliant mind is being overlooked, and their moment to be seen is coming soon.